I still remember the sound of her laughter. Cold, sharp, like glass breaking against marble. "You're broke, sweetie. Let's be honest here." My mother said it loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. Christmas dinner. The whole family gathered around the long dining table decorated with silver candles and red poinsettias. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins. My grandmother sitting at the head of the table with her hands folded, watching everything with those pale blue eyes that never missed a detail. I was 24 years old. Just 24, and she said it like I was a failure, like I was nothing. I had driven 6 hours through a snowstorm to be there. I brought gifts for everyone. Small things, but thoughtful. A scarf for my grandmother, a book for my youngest cousin. I wrapped them myself, each one with care. But none of that mattered to her. My mother leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, smiling that smile she always wore when she wanted to humiliate me in front of an audience. She thrived on it. Always had. "I mean, look at her," she continued, gesturing toward me with her perfectly manicured hand. "She's been finding herself for 2 years now. Living in that tiny apartment, working those little gigs. It's embarrassing, honestly." My face burned. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Some looked down at their plates. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. But no one said anything. No one defended me. Not my father, who just kept cutting his turkey like nothing was happening. Not my older brother, who was too busy texting under the table. Not even my grandmother, who I thought loved me unconditionally. I sat there, frozen, my hands gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. "Mom, that's not fair," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. She laughed again. That same cruel laugh. "Not fair? Honey, I'm just being realistic. You can't even afford to contribute to Christmas dinner. Your father and I paid for everything." Again. She emphasized that last word like a slap. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my plate across the room. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her toxic need to tear me down every chance she got. But I didn't. Instead, I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, her eyebrows raised in mock concern. "Don't tell me you're going to throw a tantrum now." I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who was supposed to love me. Supposed to support me. Supposed to be proud of me. And all I saw was a stranger. "I'm going to the restroom," I said quietly. As I walked away from the table, I heard her whisper to my aunt, loud enough for me to hear. So dramatic. Just like when she was a teenager. More laughter followed. I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red, but I refused to cry. Not here, not now, not for her. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. I opened my banking app, the one I hadn't checked in weeks because I was afraid of what I'd see. But when the screen loaded, I froze. The balance stared back at me. Numbers I didn't expect. Numbers that didn't make sense. My investment. The one I made 2 years ago when everyone told me I was crazy. When my mother called me reckless. When my father said I was throwing my money away. It had paid off. Beyond anything I could have imagined. I wasn't broke. I was the richest person in that entire dining room. And my mother had no idea what was about to happen next. I walked back to the dining room with my phone in my hand and my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Everyone was still eating, laughing, talking like nothing had happened. Like my mother hadn't just humiliated me in front of the entire family 10 minutes ago. She looked up when I sat down, surprise flickering across her face. "Oh, you came back," she said with that same condescending smile. "I thought you'd gone home to cry." My Aunt Linda giggled nervously into her napkin. My cousin Jason smirked from across the table. I said nothing. I just sat there watching them, observing. My mother took another sip of her wine, clearly enjoying herself. She loved having an audience. She loved being the center of attention. And she especially loved making me the punchline of her jokes. "So," she continued, turning to my aunt, "I was telling Linda earlier about this cruise your father and I are planning. 3 weeks in the Mediterranean. We leave in February." My aunt's eyes widened. 3 weeks. That sounds incredible. Oh, it will be, my mother said, waving her hand dramatically. We've been working so hard. We deserve it. Of course, we're paying for the whole thing ourselves, unlike some people who can't even afford their own rent. She glanced at me when she said it. Everyone at the table shifted uncomfortably. My grandmother cleared her throat. My father still said nothing, just kept eating like a coward. I placed my phone face down on the table, calm, quiet, waiting. Actually, Mom, I said softly, I wanted to ask you something. She looked at me with barely concealed irritation. What? How much did this dinner cost? Her expression changed. Confusion mixed with suspicion. Why do you want to know that? I shrugged. Just curious. You mentioned you and Dad paid for everything. I'm just wondering how much. My father finally looked up from his plate, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. My mother laughed again, but this time it sounded different. Less confident. Why does that matter to you? Humor me, I said. She exchanged a glance with my father. He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. Fine, she said, sitting up straighter. If you must know, this entire dinner cost about $12,000. Gasps around the table. Even I had to admit that was more than I expected. 12,000? My aunt repeated. For Christmas dinner? My mother nodded proudly. The caterers alone were 5,000. Then the decorations, the wine, the imported turkey from France, the desserts from that bakery in Manhattan. Your father and I wanted everything to be perfect. She looked directly at me. Some of us actually have the means to do things right. There it was. Another dig. Another reminder that she saw me as less than. I picked up my phone. $12,000, I repeated slowly. That's a lot of money. Yes, it is, my mother said, her voice dripping with smugness. Which is why people like you wouldn't understand. My entire body felt like it was on fire, but I kept my voice steady. Actually, Mom, I understand perfectly. I opened my banking app. I navigated to the transfer screen. I found the restaurant and catering company my mother had used. She'd mentioned their name earlier in the week when she was bragging about the menu. Everyone was watching me now. The entire table had gone silent. What are you doing? My mother asked, her smile fading. I didn't answer. Instead, I stood up and walked around the table to where she sat. I placed my phone right in front of her face. The screen showed my bank balance. The full amount. 6 figures. More money than she'd ever seen in my name. Her face went white. I'm paying for dinner, I said calmly. All $12,000 of it. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My father leaned over to look at the screen. His eyes went wide. Is that real? He stammered. Very real, I said. I pulled up the catering company's payment portal and entered the amount. $12,000. I hit confirm. The payment went through instantly. I turned the phone around so everyone at the table could see the receipt. There, I said. Christmas dinner is on me. My mother just stared at the screen, her face frozen in shock. For the first time in my entire life, she had nothing to say. But I wasn't done yet. The silence at that table was deafening. My mother's face had gone from white to red in a matter of seconds. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flush of humiliation creeping up her neck. Where did you get that money? She finally hissed, her voice low and dangerous. I smiled, not a cruel smile. Just calm, confident. I earned it, I said simply. Earned it? She stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. You don't have a real job. You've been doing freelance nonsense for 2 years. That freelance nonsense just paid for your $12,000 dinner, Mom. My Aunt Linda made a small sound, half gasp, half laugh. She quickly covered her mouth. My mother's eyes darted around the table, looking for support, looking for someone to back her up. But everyone just stared at their plates or at me or at the phone still sitting on the table showing the payment confirmation. This is ridiculous, my mother snapped. You probably borrowed that money. Or worse, you're in debt up to your eyeballs and just trying to show off. I'm not in debt, I said calmly. I have 0 debt, actually. Paid off my student loans last year. That was another punch to her ego. She still had student loans from her master's degree. I knew because she complained about them constantly. My father cleared his throat. Sweetheart, maybe we should all just— Don't sweetheart me, Richard. My mother turned on him. Our daughter just humiliated us in front of the entire family. I humiliated you? I couldn't help it. I laughed. Actually laughed. That's rich, Mom. Really rich. My grandmother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but firm. Margaret, sit down. My mother turned to look at her. Mother, you can't possibly— Sit down. There was steel in my grandmother's voice. The kind of authority that didn't get questioned. My mother sat, but her jaw was clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. My grandmother looked at me with those pale blue eyes. I couldn't read her expression. Explain, she said simply. I nodded. I owed her that much at least. 2 years ago, I invested most of my savings into cryptocurrency and tech stocks, I began. Everyone told me I was stupid. Mom called me irresponsible. Dad said I was gambling. But I did my research. I spent months studying the market, reading everything I could, talking to financial advisors. My mother scoffed. Cryptocurrency, of course. That's not real money. It is when you cash it out, I replied. Which I did. Some of it anyway. Enough to be comfortable. More than comfortable, actually. My cousin Jason leaned forward, suddenly interested. How much are we talking about? Jason! My aunt hissed. No, it's okay, I said. I looked directly at my mother. Let's just say I could buy that Mediterranean cruise you're bragging about. 10 times over. And still have plenty left. That's when my mother completely lost it. She slammed her hand on the table. The wine glasses shook. The silverware rattled. You're lying! She screamed. You're a liar. You've always been a liar. You probably stole that money or scammed someone or— Enough. The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. My older brother stood there. Daniel, the golden child. The favorite. The one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. He walked into the dining room slowly, his phone in his hand. I just got off the phone with Mark, he said quietly. Mark, his best friend from college. Who happened to work at Goldman Sachs? Who happened to have connections in the financial world? My mother's face changed. Daniel, sweetheart, what are you talking about? Daniel looked at me. There was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Respect. Maybe even admiration. I asked Mark to verify something, he said. I sent him the screenshot of your account that you showed Mom. I asked him if it was real or photoshopped. My stomach dropped. I hadn't expected that. And? My mother asked desperately, clinging to hope. Daniel turned to her. It's real, Mom, every cent of it. Mark said based on the account structure and the investment timeline, she probably started with less than $20,000 and turned it into— He paused. Well, a lot more. The room spun. Not for me, but I could see it spinning for my mother. She grabbed the edge of the table. That's impossible. It's not, Daniel said. She's smarter than we gave her credit for. He looked at me again, and for the first time in years, my brother saw me. Really saw me, but my mother wasn't done fighting. My mother stood there trembling with rage and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. This doesn't change anything, she said, her voice shaking. Money doesn't make you successful. It doesn't make you respectable. You're still the same irresponsible girl who dropped out of corporate life to chase fantasies. I didn't drop out, I corrected her. I quit a job that was destroying my mental health. There's a difference. You quit a perfectly good position at a law firm to do what? Freelance writing, graphic design? Whatever it is you do on that laptop all day. I build brands, I said calmly. I consult for startups. I invest in emerging technologies. And yes, I do it from my laptop, from my tiny apartment that you love to mock. My Aunt Linda spoke up quietly. Margaret, maybe you should— Stay out of this, Linda, my mother snapped. But Linda didn't back down. She looked at me with something like kindness. I think what you've done is incredible, she said. Most people your age are drowning in debt. You've managed to build wealth through smart decisions. That's impressive. Thank you, Aunt Linda, I said softly. My mother's face twisted. Of course you'd take her side. You always did coddle her, I'm not taking sides, Linda replied. I'm stating facts. My cousin Jason set down his fork. So wait, you're actually rich? Like millionaire rich? I hesitated. I didn't want to say the exact number. But my silence was answer enough. Jason whistled low. Damn, and here I am still asking my parents for rent money. Jason, his mother gasped. But other people were starting to talk now. Murmuring, whispering, looking at me differently than they had an hour ago. My father finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? He asked quietly. Why did you let us think you were struggling? That question hit harder than anything my mother had said. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man who had stood by silently while my mother tore me down year after year. Because you never asked, I said simply. Neither of you ever asked how I was really doing. You just assumed. You decided I was a failure and nothing I said would have changed your mind. My father flinched. That's not true, isn't it? I turned to face both of them. When was the last time you asked about my work? My life? My goals? When was the last time either of you showed any genuine interest in who I am or what I'm doing? Silence. You want to know the truth? I continued, my voice getting stronger. I didn't tell you because I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want money to be the thing that finally made you respect me. I wanted you to respect me for who I am. For my choices. For my courage to walk away from a life that was killing me and build something better. My mother's hands were shaking as she gripped the back of her chair. You're being dramatic, she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice anymore. No, Mom, I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in years. My grandmother set down her wine glass with a soft click. Margaret, she said quietly, you owe your daughter an apology. My mother whipped around to face her. Mother, you embarrassed her. In front of the entire family, on Christmas. You called her broke. You mocked her life choices. You laughed at her. My grandmother's voice was steady but hard as iron. And now we all know the truth. She's not broke. She's not irresponsible. She's brilliant. And you tried to humiliate her anyway. Tears were starting to form in my mother's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of fury, of humiliation, of having the tables turned on her so completely. I was joking, she said desperately. It was just a joke. She's always been so sensitive. It wasn't a joke, Daniel said from the doorway. His voice was quiet but firm. I've watched you do this to her for years, Mom. We all have. And we've all stayed silent because it was easier than confronting you. My mother looked at her golden child like he'd just stabbed her in the back. Daniel, how can you? Because she's my sister, he interrupted. And I've been a coward. We all have. He walked over to me and did something he hadn't done since we were kids. He hugged me. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have defended you years ago. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. When Daniel pulled away, he looked at our mother. You need to apologize. Now. My mother stood there, surrounded by her family, all of them waiting. But the words wouldn't come. And that's when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. The doorbell rang again. Long and insistent. My father stood up. I'll get it. No, my mother said quickly, her voice tight. Let the caterers handle it. They're cleaning up in the kitchen. But I was already walking toward the front door. Something in my gut told me this wasn't a random visitor. I opened the door to find a man in his 50s standing on the porch. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Behind him, a black town car idled in the driveway. Miss Carter? He asked. Yes, I replied cautiously. He extended his hand. My name is Robert Chen. I'm a senior partner at Chen & Associates. I apologize for the interruption on Christmas, but I have some time-sensitive documents that require your signature. I heard footsteps behind me. My mother appeared at my shoulder. Who is this? She demanded. We're in the middle of a family dinner. Mr. Chen glanced at her, then back at me. I can come back if this is a bad time, Miss Carter. However, the deadline for the acquisition closes tomorrow morning and… Acquisition? My mother interrupted. What acquisition? I felt my face flush. This was not how I wanted this to happen. It's fine, I told Mr. Chen. Come in. We can use my father's study. As he stepped inside, my entire family had gathered in the foyer, all of them staring, all of them curious. My mother blocked the hallway. I want to know what's going on. Right now. Mr. Chen looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, this is a confidential matter between myself and my client. Your client? My mother's voice went shrill. She's 24 years old. What kind of client business could she possibly have? Mom, please, I said quietly. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing? She laughed that awful laugh again. You've been lying to us about money. Mysterious lawyers show up on Christmas and I'm the one who should be embarrassed? Mr. Chen cleared his throat. Mrs. Carter, I assure you everything is legitimate. Your daughter is one of our firm's most valued clients. The acquisition she's finalizing is— What acquisition? My father asked, stepping forward. I closed my eyes. There was no avoiding it now. I'm buying a company, I said quietly. The silence was absolute. You're what? My mother whispered. I'm acquiring a tech startup. A company I've been consulting for over the past year. The owners want to retire, and I'm buying them out. My brother Daniel stared at me. You're buying an entire company? A small one, I said quickly. It's not like I'm buying Google or anything. Mr. Chen smiled slightly. Small is relative, Miss Carter. The valuation is $3.2 million. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. My mother grabbed the wall for support. 3.2? Million? The purchase price is actually lower due to the acquisition structure, Mr. Chen continued professionally. Miss Carter negotiated very favorable terms. She'll be paying $2.1 million, with the remainder in stock options and performance bonuses for the existing team. My father sat down heavily on the stairs. He looked pale. How? He whispered. How is this possible? I turned to Mr. Chen. Can you give us a moment? He nodded. Of course. I'll wait in the car. Take your time. He handed me his card. Call me when you're ready. As soon as the door closed behind him, my mother exploded. $2 million? She screamed. Where did you get $2 million? I told you, I said, trying to stay calm. I invested. It paid off. I've been building my portfolio for 2 years. This is insane, my father muttered. This can't be real. My grandmother walked into the foyer, moving slowly with her cane. She looked at me with those sharp blue eyes. What kind of company? She asked, finally. Someone asking the right question. It's a software development company, I explained. They create custom applications for small businesses, inventory management, customer relations, scheduling systems. I've been consulting with them, helping them expand their market reach. When the founders decided to sell, they offered me first right of refusal. And you have $2 million just sitting around? My mother asked incredulously. Not sitting around. Invested. I'll be liquidating some assets and taking a small business loan for the rest. I've already been approved. My cousin Jason laughed in disbelief. You're going to be a CEO at 24? 25 in 3 months, I corrected. But yes. My mother shook her head violently. No, this is too much. You're in over your head. You're going to lose everything. You need to call that lawyer back and tell him you've changed your mind. I'm not changing my mind, I said firmly. You're being reckless, irresponsible. You're going to throw away everything you have on some risky business venture. Like I threw away my money on cryptocurrency? I asked. Like I was reckless when I quit my job? Like I was irresponsible when I chose to invest instead of buying a new car to impress you? She flinched. This is my life, Mom. My decision, my risk. And my success when it works out. When it works out? She repeated. You mean if it works out? No, I said quietly. I mean when? My grandmother tapped her cane on the floor. I want to invest, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? My mother gasped. My grandmother looked at me. How much equity are you keeping? I blinked in surprise. 70%. The existing owners are retaining 15%, and I'm setting aside 15% for future investors and employee stock options. I'll take 5%, my grandmother said. How much? My mind raced. That would be approximately $160,000. Without hesitation, my grandmother nodded. Done. Have your lawyer draw up the papers. My mother looked like she might faint, but what happened next shocked everyone even more. My mother's face had gone from red to purple. Mother, you can't be serious, she said, her voice rising to a near shriek. You're going to give her $160,000? Just like that? My grandmother didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on me. I'm not giving her anything, Margaret. I'm making an investment. There's a difference. But that's your retirement money. Your savings. It's my money, my grandmother said coolly, and I'll do with it as I please. I was stunned, completely speechless. My grandmother had always been kind to me, but this? This was beyond anything I expected. Grandma, you don't have to, I started. She held up one hand. I know I don't have to. I want to. I've watched you these past 2 years. While everyone else was mocking you, I was paying attention. You work harder than anyone in this family. You're smart, disciplined, and you have vision. She turned to my mother, which is more than I can say for some people. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. My Aunt Linda spoke up hesitantly. If you're looking for investors, I'd like to put in $25,000. Linda. My mother whirled on her. Have you lost your mind too? No, Linda said firmly. But I've been watching what she's accomplished. And honestly, Margaret, I trust her financial judgment more than I trust the stock market right now. My cousin Jason raised his hand like he was in school. I've got about $5,000 saved up. Can I get in on this? I couldn't believe what was happening. My family, the same people who had been sitting silently while my mother humiliated me an hour ago, were now lining up to invest in my company. My father stood up slowly. I'd like to invest as well. That stopped everyone cold. My mother turned to him, her face a mask of betrayal. Richard, you cannot be serious. I'm very serious, he said quietly. I have some money set aside. $50,000. I want to invest it. That's our vacation fund. My mother shrieked. It was our vacation fund, my father corrected. But after hearing what our daughter has accomplished, I think this is a better use of the money. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Pride, maybe even remorse. I'm sorry, he said softly, for not believing in you, for staying silent when I should have spoken up. I want to support you now, if you'll let me. I felt tears burning in my eyes again. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My mother stood in the middle of the foyer, looking around wildly at her family, at everyone who was choosing me over her. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You're all being manipulated. She probably planned this whole thing. The timing, the lawyer showing up, all of it. This is just another one of her attention-seeking stunts. That's when my brother Daniel stepped forward and said the words that changed everything. No, Mom. The only stunt here is the one you've been pulling for years. My mother stared at him. What did you just say to me? You heard me, Daniel said, his voice steady. I'm tired of watching you tear her down. I'm tired of being your golden child while you treat her like garbage. I'm tired of pretending that the way you treat her is normal or acceptable. Daniel, I have always what? He interrupted. Always loved us equally? That's a lie, and everyone in this room knows it. You've been competing with your own daughter since she was a teenager. You can't stand that she's successful on her own terms instead of yours. My mother's hands were shaking. How dare you speak to me that way? How dare you speak to her the way you do? Daniel shot back. She's brilliant, Mom. She's brave. She took risks that terrified her because she believed in herself when nobody else did. Especially not you. He turned to me. I want to invest too. 100,000. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. That's your house down payment. She gasped. I'll buy a house later, Daniel said simply. Right now, I want to invest in my sister. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down my cheeks as my brother walked over and squeezed my shoulder. My mother looked around at all of us. Her mother, her sister, her son, her husband, her nephew, all of us standing with me. Fine, she said, her voice shaking with rage and something else. Something broken. Fine, throw your money away. But don't come crying to me when this all falls apart and she loses everything. She grabbed her purse from the hall table. Where are you going? My father asked. Out, she snapped. I can't be here right now. I can't watch my entire family make fools of themselves. She yanked open the front door and stormed out into the cold December night. We heard her car start, then the sound of tires on gravel as she sped away. The house was silent. My grandmother sighed. Well, that went about as well as expected. Despite everything, I laughed. It was a broken, tearful laugh, but it was real. My father ran a hand through his hair. I should probably go after her. No, my grandmother said firmly. Let her cool down. She needs time to process the fact that the world doesn't revolve around her ego. He nodded slowly, then looked at me. Are you okay? Was I okay? My mother had just stormed out on Christmas. Half my family was investing in my company. A lawyer was waiting in the driveway for my signature. I think so, I said honestly. This wasn't how I wanted today to go. But it's how it needed to go, Daniel said quietly. My grandmother tapped her cane. Now, let's get that lawyer back in here and sign those papers. Then we can have dessert. I wiped my eyes and nodded. I pulled out Mr. Chen's card and called him. But as I waited for him to answer, I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother wasn't done yet. Mr. Chen came back inside with his briefcase and a professional smile that didn't quite hide his curiosity about what had just happened. We gathered in my father's study. Me, Mr. Chen, my grandmother, my father, Daniel, Aunt Linda, and Jason. The people who believed in me. The people who were putting their money where their mouths were. Mr. Chen spread the documents across the mahogany desk. These are the acquisition agreements, he explained. Miss Carter, you'll be signing as the primary purchaser and majority shareholder. The existing owners have already signed their portions. Once you sign, we'll file with the state and the transfer of ownership will be official by Monday morning. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the pen. This was real. This was actually happening. I was about to own a company. At 24 years old. Wait, my father said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. He cleared his throat. I just want to say something before you sign. He looked at me and his eyes were wet. I'm proud of you. I should have said it years ago. I should have said it every day. But I'm saying it now. I'm so incredibly proud of you. My throat tightened. Dad, let me finish, he said gently. Your mother and I, we had expectations for you. We thought we knew what success looked like. A corporate job, a certain salary, a traditional path. And when you walked away from all of that, we thought you were making a mistake. He shook his head. But you weren't making a mistake. You were making a choice. Your choice. And it took more courage than anything I've ever done in my life. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Sign those papers, he said with a small smile, and show the world what you're made of. I signed. Page after page, my signature appearing over and over until my hand cramped. When it was done, Mr. Chen gathered the documents and placed them carefully back in his briefcase. Congratulations, Miss Carter, he said, shaking my hand. You're now the owner and CEO of Apex Solutions. CEO. The word felt surreal. My grandmother raised her wine glass. To my granddaughter, the first self-made success story in this family. We all raised our glasses. Even Mr. Chen accepted a small glass of wine before he left. After he was gone, we sat in the study, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. So what happens now? Jason asked. Do you go to an office every day? I laughed. The company is fully remote right now, but I'm planning to lease office space in the spring. Build a real headquarters. Hire more developers. How many employees do you have? Aunt Linda asked. 12 right now, but I want to double that in the first year. Daniel whistled. You're going to be busy. Very busy, I admitted. But it's what I want. What I've been working toward. My father leaned back in his chair. Your mother is going to have a hard time with this. I know, I said quietly. She's going to say terrible things. She's going to try to undermine you. She's going to tell everyone who will listen that you're going to fail. I know, I repeated. But you're not going to fail, he said firmly. because you're smarter and stronger than she ever gave you credit for. It felt like something inside me that had been broken for years was finally starting to heal. We heard the front door open. Footsteps in the hallway. My mother was back. Everyone tensed. I stood up, preparing myself for round 2. But when she appeared in the doorway of the study, she wasn't alone. She had someone with her. A man in his 30s wearing designer clothes and an expression that made my stomach turn. "Everyone," my mother said, her voice cold and triumphant. "I'd like you to meet Derek Mitchell. He's a business consultant and financial advisor. I called him on my way home." Derek stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Hello, everyone. I apologize for the intrusion on Christmas, but Margaret was very insistent that I come right away." My grandmother's eyes narrowed. "And why exactly are you here, Mr. Mitchell?" "Well," he said, pulling out a tablet from his bag, "Margaret has some concerns about her daughter's recent financial decisions. She's asked me to conduct a professional assessment of this business acquisition to ensure it's legitimate and viable." My mother crossed her arms, her expression victorious. "If you're really buying a company, you won't mind having a professional look at the numbers. Will you, sweetheart?" The way she said sweetheart made it sound like an insult. I looked at this Derek person, at his expensive suit and his tablet and his practiced corporate smile. "How much is she paying you?" I asked bluntly. He blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "My mother. How much is she paying you to come here on Christmas night and try to discredit me?" His smile faltered. "I'm here to provide an objective professional opinion." "Objective," I repeated. "Right." My mother stepped forward. "Unless you have something to hide, this shouldn't be a problem. A legitimate business deal should hold up to scrutiny." I could see what she was doing. She was trying to regain control. Trying to prove that I was a fraud or a fool or both. "Fine," I said calmly. "Ask whatever you want." Derek pulled up something on his tablet. "First, I'd like to see the purchase agreement you just signed." "No." Mr. Chen's voice came from behind me. I turned. He was standing in the doorway, briefcase in hand. He must have heard the commotion and come back inside. "Those documents are confidential," Mr. Chen said firmly. "And unless Mr. Mitchell is Miss Carter's legal representative, which I know he is not, he has no right to view them." Derek's professional smile turned into a smirk. "I see. Hiding behind confidentiality agreements. That's convenient. It's called attorney-client privilege," Mr. Chen replied coolly. "Something I'm sure you're familiar with, Mr. Mitchell. Or should I say former Mr. Mitchell?" The room went silent. "I'm sorry?" Derek said, his smile freezing. Mr. Chen pulled out his phone. "Derek Mitchell, formerly a junior analyst at Prescott Financial. Terminated 3 years ago for falsifying client reports. Currently operating as an unlicensed consultant under an LLC that exists solely to avoid regulatory oversight." Derek's face went white. My mother looked between them. "What? What is he talking about?" Mr. Chen looked at her with something like pity. "Mrs. Carter, the man you hired to discredit your daughter is a fraud himself." And that's when everything exploded. Derek's face shifted from white to red in seconds. "That's slander," he said, his voice tight. "I could sue you for that." "Please do," Mr. Chen replied calmly. "I have all the documentation to back up every word I just said. In fact, I recognize you from a case my firm handled 2 years ago. We represented the clients you defrauded at Prescott Financial." My mother took a step back from Derek. "Is this true?" Derek's jaw clenched. "Those charges were dropped. It was a misunderstanding." "The criminal charges were dropped due to lack of evidence," Mr. Chen corrected. "The civil suit, however, resulted in a settlement of $400,000. Which you paid, because you were guilty." "I settled to avoid a lengthy trial," Derek snapped. "You settled because you knew you'd lose," Mr. Chen said. "And now you're operating under a shell company, taking money from desperate people who don't know your history." My mother's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, how much did she pay you?" I asked again, looking at Derek. He didn't answer. His eyes darted toward the door like he was calculating whether he could make a run for it. "5,000, my mother whispered. "I paid him $5,000. The number hung in the air like a grenade. $5,000. To humiliate me. To try to prove I was a fraud. To tear down everything I'd built. Mom, I said quietly, you paid a disgraced financial analyst $5,000 to come here on Christmas and attack me. Does that sound rational to you? She stood there, frozen, realizing what she'd done. Derek grabbed his tablet. I don't have to listen to this. I'm leaving. Not with her money, you're not, Daniel said, stepping in front of the door. Give it back. I provided a service. You provided nothing, Daniel interrupted. You showed up. That's it. You didn't review any documents. You didn't provide any analysis. Give my mother her money back, or I'm calling the police for fraud. Derek looked around the room, at all of us staring at him, at Mr. Chen with his phone out, probably recording everything. He pulled out his phone and made a transfer. There, done. $5,000 back to Margaret Carter. Now move. Daniel stepped aside. Derek practically ran out of the house. We heard his car start and speed away into the night. The study was silent except for my mother's ragged breathing. I can't believe She started, then stopped. Her hand was shaking as she pressed it against her forehead. I just wanted to prove that I was lying. I finished for her. That I was a fraud? That I couldn't possibly have succeeded without your approval? She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just emptiness. Why? I asked. Why do you hate seeing me succeed? I don't hate it, she whispered. Then what is it? My voice broke. What did I do to make you despise me so much? My mother collapsed into a chair and sobbed like I'd never seen her cry before. You didn't do anything, she choked out. You didn't do anything wrong, it's me. It's always been me. My grandmother moved closer, leaning on her cane. Margaret, tell her the truth. My mother looked up at her mother with desperate eyes. I can't. You can, my grandmother said firmly. And you will. She deserves to know. Know what? I asked, looking between them. My mother wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. She looked smaller somehow. Broken. When I was your age, she began slowly, I had dreams too. I wanted to start my own interior design business. I had investors lined up. I had clients interested. I had a whole plan. She took a shaky breath. But my mother, your grandmother, told me I was being irresponsible, that I needed to focus on getting married and starting a family. That business ownership was too risky for a young woman. I looked at my grandmother in shock. She nodded slowly, her face sad. I was wrong, my grandmother said quietly. I was scared. It was a different time and I thought I was protecting her. But I wasn't. I was projecting my own fears onto her. My mother continued, her voice hollow. So I gave it up. I married your father. I had you and Daniel. And I convinced myself I was happy, that I'd made the right choice. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. And then you came along and did exactly what I was too afraid to do. You walked away from security. You took risks. You believed in yourself, and you succeeded. Understanding crashed over me like a wave. You've been jealous, I whispered. This whole time, you've been jealous of me. She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I know it's terrible. I know it makes me a horrible mother, but every time I looked at you, I saw everything I could have been. Everything I gave up. And instead of being proud of you, I resented you for having the courage I never had. The room was absolutely silent. My father sat down heavily, his face pale. Margaret, I never knew. You never told me. How could I? She asked bitterly. How could I admit that I was jealous of my own daughter? What kind of mother does that? A human one, my grandmother said softly. We all make mistakes, Margaret. The question is whether you're willing to fix them. My mother looked at me. Really looked at me. Without the armor of anger or the mask of superiority. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. For everything. For tonight. For the last 2 years. For every cruel word and every moment I made you feel small. You didn't deserve any of it. I stood there, processing everything. Part of me wanted to hug her. Part of me wanted to walk away. Part of me just felt tired. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, I said honestly. This has been a lot, she nodded. I understand. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth. My father stood up and walked over to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll work on this, together, as a family. Daniel cleared his throat. I think we could all use some space tonight. Maybe we should— The doorbell rang again. Who now? Jason muttered. I walked to the door, exhausted and emotionally drained. When I opened it, I found a woman in her 60s standing there, well-dressed, professional, and holding a manila envelope. Miss Carter? She asked. Yes? I'm Patricia Hartwell. I represent the Donovan Family Trust. I have something you need to see immediately. And just when I thought this night couldn't get any stranger, it did. I stared at the woman on my doorstep. The Donovan Family Trust? I repeated. I don't know anyone named Donovan. Patricia Hartwell smiled gently. May I come in? This is rather sensitive, and I'd prefer not to discuss it on your porch. I glanced back at my family gathered in the hallway, all of them looking as confused as I felt. Okay, I said, stepping aside. Patricia walked in with the confidence of someone who'd done this many times before. She looked around at all of us and nodded politely. I apologize for the intrusion on Christmas evening. However, the matter is time-sensitive, and I was instructed to deliver these documents to Miss Carter as soon as possible. What documents? My father asked. Patricia turned to me. Miss Carter, are you familiar with the name Elizabeth Donovan? I searched my memory. No, I don't think so. What about Elizabeth Mitchell? That was her maiden name. Something flickered in the back of my mind. Mitchell. Why did that sound familiar? My grandmother gasped softly behind me. I turned to look at her. Her face had gone pale, and she was gripping her cane so tightly her knuckles were white. Grandma? I asked. Do you know that name? She nodded slowly. Elizabeth Mitchell was my best friend. We grew up together. We were inseparable until— She trailed off, her eyes distant. Until we had a falling out when we were in our 30s. I haven't spoken to her in over 40 years. Patricia nodded. Yes, Mrs. Donovan mentioned you, Mrs. Carter. She spoke of you often, actually, with great regret. She's spoken about me? My grandmother whispered. In present tense? I'm afraid not anymore, Patricia said gently. Elizabeth Donovan passed away 3 weeks ago. I'm the executor of her estate. The room went silent. I'm very sorry for your loss, I said quietly to my grandmother, who was now openly crying. Patricia opened the manila envelope. Mrs. Donovan left very specific instructions in her will. She had been following your career, Miss Carter. For the past 2 years, she'd been monitoring your investments, your business ventures, your success. Following me? I asked, confused. Why? I never even met her. Because, Patricia said, pulling out a document, Elizabeth Donovan was your great-aunt, your grandmother's sister. Everything stopped. Sister? I whispered. My grandmother shook her head. No, Elizabeth was my friend. My best friend. Not my sister. Patricia looked at her with compassion. Mrs. Carter, I understand this is shocking, but Elizabeth was quite clear. She was your half-sister. Your father had an affair when your mother was pregnant with you. Elizabeth was the result. My grandmother sat down heavily, her face ashen. That's not possible. My father would never. I have the DNA tests, Patricia said gently. Elizabeth conducted them years ago when she discovered the truth. She tried to reach out to you multiple times, but I refused to see her, my grandmother finished, her voice breaking. After our fight, I told her I never wanted to speak to her again. I was so angry, so hurt. And all this time, she was my sister, and I didn't know. Tears were streaming down my grandmother's face as she realized what she'd lost. Patricia gave her a moment, then turned back to me. Elizabeth never had children of her own. She built a very successful real estate empire over her lifetime, and in her will, she left specific instructions regarding her estate. She handed me the document. I read it, then read it again, then looked up at Patricia in complete shock. This says she's leaving me $12 million. The room erupted. $12 million? My mother shrieked. That can't be right. my father stammered. Daniel grabbed the paper from my hands and read it himself. His eyes went wide. It's real. It's really real. Patricia nodded. $12 million to be exact. Along with her real estate holdings, which are valued at approximately $8 million more. She also left a personal letter for you, Miss Carter. She handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in elegant cursive handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was 2 pages long. I read it silently while everyone waited. Dear Sarah, though we've never met, I feel like I know you. I've been watching your journey from afar, and I see so much of myself in you. Your courage, your determination, your refusal to follow a path that doesn't serve you. I wish I could have told you who I was. I wish I could have been part of your life. But circumstances kept us apart, and by the time I learned the truth about my connection to your grandmother, too many years had passed. Too much pride. Too much hurt. I'm leaving you my fortune not because you need it. You've proven you're more than capable of creating your own success, but because I want you to have the freedom to dream bigger than you ever thought possible. Build your empire. Take risks. Make mistakes. And know that somewhere, your great-aunt Elizabeth is cheering you on. Use this money to create something beautiful, something meaningful, something that will outlast both of us. With love and admiration, Elizabeth, I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. $20 million. Combined with what I already had, combined with the company I just bought, I was suddenly worth more than I ever imagined possible. My mother stood there, her mouth opening and closing, unable to form words. My grandmother was crying softly, grieving for a sister she never knew she had, and now would never have the chance to reconcile with. Patricia cleared her throat. There's one more thing. Mrs. Donovan left instructions that 10% of the estate should go to your grandmother, Mrs. Carter. $2 million. She said, and I quote, "Tell Ruth I forgive her. And I hope she can forgive me too." My grandmother sobbed harder. There are papers to sign, of course, Patricia continued. But I can handle all of that after the holidays. For tonight, I just wanted to deliver the news personally as Mrs. Donovan requested. She handed me her card. Call me when you're ready. There's no rush. After she left, we all stood in the foyer, stunned into silence. My mother finally spoke, her voice small and broken. You're a millionaire, she whispered. A real millionaire. I looked at her. At this woman who had spent years tearing me down because she was jealous of my courage. And I realized something. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her validation. I didn't need anything from her except the truth, which she'd finally given me. Yes, I said simply, I am. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, absolutely free. The rest of Christmas night passed in a blur. My grandmother sat in the living room, holding the letter from Elizabeth over and over, reading it through tears. My father sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders as she grieved for a sister she'd lost without ever truly knowing. My mother had retreated to her bedroom. I could hear her crying through the door, but I didn't go to her. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. Daniel, Aunt Linda, Jason, and I sat in the kitchen with leftover pie and coffee that had gone cold hours ago. So, Jason said, breaking the silence, you're actually rich now. Like private jet rich. I laughed despite everything. I don't think I'm private jet rich, but yeah, it's surreal. What are you going to do with it? Aunt Linda asked gently. I thought about that. About Elizabeth's letter? About her wishes for me. I'm going to grow the company, I said slowly. Hire more people. Create jobs. Maybe start a venture capital fund to invest in other young entrepreneurs who are told they're too young or too inexperienced or too risky. That sounds perfect, Daniel said quietly. And I'm going to set up a scholarship, I continued, the idea forming as I spoke. The Elizabeth Donovan Scholarship. For young women who want to start their own businesses but don't have the capital or the support. Aunt Linda smiled through fresh tears. She would have loved that. We sat there for a while longer, processing everything that had happened. The humiliation at dinner. The payment. The investments. The lawyer. My mother's confession. The inheritance. It felt like a lifetime had passed in one evening. Around midnight, my grandmother came into the kitchen. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something peaceful in her expression. "I'm going to establish a foundation," she said quietly. "In Elizabeth's name. For women over 50 who want to start businesses. It's never too late to chase your dreams." She looked at me. "I'm sorry I didn't defend you earlier. At dinner. I should have stood up for you immediately." "You stood up for me when it mattered," I said, standing to hug her. "You believed in me. You invested in me. That means everything." She held me tight. "You're extraordinary. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise." We stood there in that kitchen, 3 generations of women who had all been told to play small, and we made a silent promise to never do that again. My father appeared in the doorway. "Your mother wants to talk to you," he said to me. "If you're ready." No pressure. I took a deep breath. "Okay." I walked up the stairs and knocked on my parents' bedroom door. "Come in," my mother's voice said, hoarse from crying. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, makeup gone, looking older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said immediately. "I don't deserve it." I sat down in the chair by the window. "No, you don't." She flinched but nodded. "I've spent years projecting my failures onto you. My regrets. My what-ifs. And you paid the price for my cowardice." "Yes," I said simply. "I did. I want to try," she said, her voice breaking. "I want to try to be better, to be the mother you deserved all along. But I understand if it's too late, if I've destroyed everything beyond repair." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw someone who was broken, someone who had been carrying pain and regret for decades and didn't know how to process it except by inflicting it on others. "I need time," I said honestly. "I need space. I need you to respect my boundaries and stop trying to control or diminish me." "I will," she said quickly. "I promise I will." "And I need you to go to therapy," I added. "Real therapy? Not just going once and deciding you're fixed." "Actual work," she nodded. "I'll do it. Whatever it takes." I stood up. "Then maybe we can rebuild something. Not what we had before, that's gone. But something new. Something healthier." "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me completely." I didn't respond to that. I wasn't sure I hadn't given up on her. I just knew I wasn't ready to close the door completely. Not yet. I went back downstairs where my family was gathered. My real family. The ones who had chosen me, who had believed in me, who had put their money and their faith in my vision. "I think it's time to call it a night," I said with a tired smile. As everyone started gathering their things and saying their goodbyes, Daniel pulled me aside. "Hey," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. For all the years I stayed silent. For being too afraid to stand up to Mom. You deserved better from me." "You stood up tonight," I said. "That's what matters." He hugged me tight. "I'm proud to be your brother." After everyone left, I sat alone in the living room with the lights from the Christmas tree casting soft shadows on the walls. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia Hartwell. I forgot to mention, Elizabeth left you one more thing. A property in Colorado, a cabin in the mountains. She said in her notes that every empire builder needs a place to rest. The keys are with my office. It's yours whenever you're ready." I smiled and looked up at the ceiling, as if I could somehow see Elizabeth watching from wherever she was. "Thank you," I whispered. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. At the top, I typed, "The Elizabeth Donovan Foundation, Empowering Women Entrepreneurs." And I started writing, because that's what you do when life tries to break you and you refuse to stay broken. You build something beautiful from the wreckage. You prove every doubter wrong. You become exactly who you were always meant to be. And you never, ever apologize for your success. 3 months later, I stood in front of my new office building. Apex Solutions was printed in bold letters across the front. We'd gone from 12 employees to 32. The Elizabeth Donovan Scholarship had its first 10 recipients. My grandmother's foundation had funded 15 women over 50 to start their own businesses. And my mother? She was in therapy. We had coffee once a month. It was awkward and difficult, but it was something. my phone rang. A video call from Daniel. "Hey, boss," he said with a grin. He'd quit his corporate job to become my chief operating officer. "Don't call me boss," I said, laughing. "Too bad, you're stuck with it. Listen, we just closed another major contract. Guess how much?" "How much?" $2.5 million, annual." I felt that familiar rush of excitement and pride. "We did it." "No," Daniel corrected. "You did it. We're just along for the ride." As I stood there, looking at everything I'd built, I thought about that Christmas dinner, about my mother's cruel laughter, about the moment I decided I was done being small. "You're broke, sweetie. Let's be honest here." Those words had been meant to destroy me. Instead, they had set me free, and I'd never been more grateful.